You did not find this message by accident. Something in you has been stirring for a long time. A quiet pressure in the spirit, a sense that something about this world never quite fit you. You tried to ignore it. You tried to blend in. You tried to live like everyone else. But the truth kept knocking. Because you were never meant to sleep as deeply as the rest of the world. Chosen one, listen carefully. There are forces in this world that fear one thing above all else. Your awakening, not your talent, not your personality, not even your struggles. Your awakening. Because the moment you recognize who you truly are, the moment you realize the favor resting on your life, the moment you see that your isolation was never rejection, but preparation, everything changes, and the system built on your spiritual sleep begins to crack. But here is the truth most people never hear. The enemy rarely attacks your purpose directly. He is more subtle than that. He does not always strike with chaos. He does not always appear as darkness. Often, he comes wrapped in comfort, silence, distraction, numbness. Because if he can keep you spiritually asleep, he never has to fight the awakened version of you. And that is the real war. Many chosen ones think warfare always looks dramatic, but some of the most dangerous battles happen quietly, slowly, day after day, energy drained, clarity blurred, purpose delayed, until the fire that once burned inside you begins to feel distant. Have you ever felt that, like something sacred inside you was fading? But you could not explain why. You were not necessarily doing anything wrong. You were just drifting. That was not random. Chosen one, there are hidden tactics designed to drain the divine spark placed within you. Subtle strategies, quiet manipulations, spiritual anesthetics. And if you do not recognize them, they will slowly steal years of your destiny. But once you see them, once the veil lifts, the power shifts back to you. In this message, you are going to uncover 9 hidden tactics used to drain your God spark during deep spiritual slumber. 9, not obvious attacks, hidden ones. The kind that keep chosen ones confused, delayed, and doubting their own light. But the fact that you are hearing this now is not coincidence. It is timing, divine timing. Something in your spirit is already beginning to wake up. You can feel it, the discomfort with ordinary life, the hunger for deeper truth, the quiet refusal to settle for the numb routine of the world. That is not rebellion. That is recognition. And if this message resonates with something deep in your spirit, take a moment and anchor yourself in this space. Subscribe. Stand with this community of awakened souls. Because messages like this are not entertainment. They are reminders, signals to the chosen that they are not alone in this war. Now listen closely, because the first tactic is far more subtle than most people realize. It does not arrive as chaos, it arrives as comfort. First, the enemy wraps your purpose in comfortable numbness, so you never question the sleep. You expected warfare to look violent, but sometimes warfare feels peaceful, too peaceful. Have you ever noticed seasons where nothing seemed dramatically wrong, yet something inside you felt dull, not broken, just quiet, muted? Your days filled with routine, your mind filled with noise, your spirit strangely silent. That is how it begins. Chosen ones are rarely attacked head-on in the beginning. Your spirit is softened first, distracted, sedated. Look at the world around you. Endless scrolling, endless notifications, endless trivial concerns fighting for your attention. Your focus is constantly pulled outward, away from the inner voice, away from the whisper of God within you. And slowly, the divine alarm system inside your soul begins to dim. You stop questioning things. You stop listening deeply. You stop noticing the subtle spiritual signals that once guided you. This is not weakness. This is strategy. Because the enemy knows something about you. Your spirit is powerful when it is awake. Your discernment is dangerous when it is sharp. Your intuition becomes unstoppable when you listen to it. So what does darkness do? It dulls you. Not through destruction, through comfort, through distraction, through a false peace that keeps you from asking deeper questions. You feel calm, but not alive. You feel stable, but not aligned. You feel safe, but strangely empty. and you begin to believe that numbness is normal. But your soul knows the truth. That quiet restlessness inside you, that feeling that something greater is waiting, that is the spark refusing to die. Chosen one, hear this clearly. Your spiritual dissatisfaction was never the problem. It was the signal. The moment you began questioning the numb routine of the world, your awakening had already begun, which is why the enemy fears what comes next. Because once you shake off the numbness, once your spirit becomes alert again, you start seeing things others cannot see. You start sensing manipulation others cannot sense. You start remembering who you really are. And when that happens, the tactics must change, which brings us to the next strategy. Second, the rewriting of your identity. This tactic runs deeper than distraction, deeper than numbness. Because once distraction softens your spirit, the next move is to redefine who you believe you are. Listen carefully. The world does not just try to control your actions, it tries to rename you. From the moment you began walking through this system, voices started speaking over you. Teachers, authority figures, social expectations, labels everywhere. Average, too sensitive, too intense, too different, too much. Have you noticed that how quickly the world tries to categorize you, put you in a box, assign a role? Because once a label sticks, something dangerous happens. You begin seeing yourself through it, and slowly, the memory of who you truly are fades. Chosen one, understand this. Darkness rarely needs to destroy the chosen. It only needs to confuse them about their identity. Because a chosen soul who forgets their calling will live far beneath their authority. You may still function, you may still survive, but you will not rise, and the enemy knows that. So the rewriting begins subtly. You are told to be realistic. You are told not to dream too big. You are told to quiet that strange intuition inside you. The world calls it imagination, but heaven calls it recognition. And somewhere along the journey, something inside you started questioning itself. That deep inner knowing you once trusted. That quiet voice that told you there was more to your life. The system began teaching you to doubt it, to suppress it, to ignore it. Have you ever felt that inner conflict, one part of you sensing something sacred about your path, and another voice whispering, "Who do you think you are?" That voice did not originate in your spirit, it was planted. Because the greatest theft the enemy commits is not the theft of your energy, it is the theft of your identity. If he can convince you that you are ordinary, you will never step into extraordinary authority. If he can convince you that you are replaceable, you will never recognize the assignment that only you can carry. If he can convince you that your voice does not matter, you will silence yourself before the world ever tries. But here's the truth most people never realize. Your life has always resisted those labels. Think about it. Why have you always felt different? Why have you never been fully comfortable inside the expectations of the world? Why have people misunderstood you, even when your intentions were pure? That was not failure. That was evidence. Evidence that your spirit was never designed to fit inside the structures built for ordinary lives. Chosen ones always experience this tension. The world pushes them into boxes, but their spirit keeps pushing outward. Because deep inside, the divine signature on your life cannot be erased. It can be buried, it can be doubted, it can be ignored for a season, but it cannot be deleted. And the fact that you are hearing this message right now means something important. The rewriting is breaking. You are starting to remember. Remember the strange sense of purpose you carried as a child. Remember the instincts you once trusted before the world told you to silence them. Remember the quiet conviction that your life was meant for something greater. That memory returning to you right now, that is not nostalgia, that is awakening. And once a chosen one begins remembering who they truly are, darkness becomes nervous, because identity is power, which leads directly to the next hidden tactic. Third, the introduction of false light. This is where the warfare becomes truly deceptive, because darkness does not always appear as darkness. Sometimes it appears as illumination. It sounds spiritual, it feels insightful, it looks awakened, but something inside you always felt slightly off. Have you noticed that moments where you encountered teachings that sounded powerful on the surface, yet left your spirit strangely empty. Words without weight, wisdom without authority, light without fire. Chosen one, understand this carefully. Once you begin waking up, the enemy changes strategies. He knows you will no longer accept obvious darkness, so he sends imitation light, half-truths, distorted revelations, spiritual language that sounds elevated but quietly disconnects you from divine authority. And suddenly the path becomes crowded. Endless voices, endless teachings, endless philosophies competing for your attention, each one claiming to hold the secret, each one promising enlightenment. But notice something. Many of these paths keep you in a constant state of searching, always learning, always exploring, always seeking, but rarely arriving, rarely stepping into authority, rarely walking in the power you were meant to carry. Why? Because counterfeit spirituality is designed to keep you fascinated, but never activated. It entertains the mind while starving the spirit. It fills your head with ideas while draining your divine spark. And many chosen ones fall into this trap during their awakening phase. You begin asking deeper questions. You begin searching for truth, and suddenly you encounter a flood of voices telling you what reality is. Some of them sound wise. Some of them sound mystical. Some of them even feel empowering for a moment. But slowly, something dangerous happens. Your connection to the original source begins to weaken. Instead of listening inward, you start chasing external answers. Instead of trusting the voice placed inside your spirit, you start depending on the voices of strangers. Chosen one, hear this clearly. The adversary does not fear your curiosity. He does not fear your spiritual interest. He does not even fear belief. What he fears is recognition. Recognition of who you truly are. Recognition of the authority placed inside your spirit. Recognition that you were never meant to wander endlessly in search of light, because the light was placed within you from the beginning. That is the truth false systems try to hide. They want you fascinated with the concept of awakening, but terrified of stepping into your divine authority. They want you studying power, but never embodying it. And this is why your spirit has rejected certain teachings, even when others embrace them. Have you ever felt that when everyone around you seemed captivated by a message, yet something inside you resisted it? You could not explain why. You just felt it. That was not rebellion. That was discernment. The divine spark inside you recognizes counterfeit light. It senses when truth has been diluted. It knows when wisdom has been stripped of divine authority. That discomfort you felt in those moments, that was the spirit of truth protecting you. Because once a chosen one stops chasing imitation light, something extraordinary happens. Clarity returns, the fog lifts, the noise fades, and suddenly your inner voice becomes stronger than every external voice. This is the moment darkness fears, because once you stop seeking light outside yourself, you begin embodying it. And when a chosen one becomes a living light, illusion cannot survive in their presence, which leads directly to the next tactic. Fourth, the harvesting of your emotional energy through manufactured chaos. This tactic is brutal because it attacks the very fuel of your spirit, your emotional energy. Chosen one, you are not designed to feel lightly. Your heart is deep. Your empathy is powerful. Your emotional range is wide. What others feel faintly, you feel intensely. That is not weakness. That is spiritual capacity. But darkness knows something about that capacity. Your emotions are power. Your passion is power. Your compassion is power. And when directed properly, that power becomes spiritual authority. So the enemy developed a strategy. If he cannot destroy your light, he will exhaust it. Have you noticed how often chaos seems to surround your life? Misunderstandings, conflicts, unnecessary drama, or arguments that appear from nowhere, tension that drains your spirit, situations that demand emotional reactions over and over again. At first you thought it was coincidence, bad luck, difficult people, but look deeper. The pattern is too consistent because emotional chaos is not random when it targets the chosen. It is manufactured warfare. The goal is simple: keep you reacting, keep you overwhelmed, keep you emotionally entangled in situations that pull your focus away from your calling. Because the more reactive you become, the less conscious you remain. And when consciousness drops, discernment drops with it. Chosen one, hear this carefully. When your emotions are constantly triggered, your spiritual clarity begins to blur. You stop seeing things clearly. You stop hearing the quiet voice of divine guidance. Your mind becomes foggy. Your spirit becomes tired. Your attention becomes scattered. And the enemy loves that state because a chosen one operating in emotional exhaustion will doubt themselves. You will question your instincts. You will second-guess your path. You may even wonder if you are losing your strength. But the truth is simpler than that. Your energy has been under attack. Think about the people who constantly pull you into emotional storms, the environments that drain your spirit, the conversations that leave you feeling hollow. Those are not small things. They are battlegrounds, and many chosen ones have spent years fighting battles that were never meant to be theirs, fighting drama that was designed to distract them, defending themselves in conflicts that were engineered to exhaust them. But something began changing in you recently. You started noticing the pattern. You started stepping back. You started asking yourself a dangerous question. Why am I giving my emotional energy to this? That question is powerful because awareness breaks manipulation. The moment you stop reacting blindly, the moment you stop feeding chaos with your energy, the system begins losing its grip on you. Chosen one, you must understand this truth. Your emotional energy is sacred. It is not meant to fuel endless drama. It is meant to fuel purpose. When your heart aligns with your calling, your emotions become strength. Your passion becomes clarity. Your compassion becomes leadership. And suddenly the chaos around you loses its power because you are no longer reacting. You are observing. You are discerning. You are choosing where your energy flows. And when a chosen one begins guarding their emotional energy, darkness loses one of its most effective weapons, which is why the enemy must escalate again. The next tactic goes even deeper, because once chaos no longer controls you, the system tries something far more personal. Fifth, isolation is engineered so you mistake your calling for rejection. This one cuts deep because it attacks the place where most chosen ones secretly bleed. Loneliness. You have felt it. Rooms full of people, yet something inside you felt separate. Conversations happening around you, yet your spirit felt distant, not superior, just different. And for a long time you tried to explain it away. Maybe you were too sensitive. Maybe you were too intense. Maybe you were the problem. Have you ever told yourself that maybe something is wrong with me? That thought has haunted many chosen ones. But listen carefully now. That thought was planted because your isolation was never proof of your brokenness. It was proof of your assignment. Chosen ones are rarely allowed to grow in environments that would dilute their frequency. Your spirit carries something uncommon: clarity, discernment, a fire that refuses to settle for shallow living. And environments built on comfort, conformity, and surface-level thinking cannot hold that kind of fire. So what happens? Separation. Not always dramatic, sometimes gradual. Friendships fade, paths diverge. You begin seeing things others do not see. You begin questioning patterns others accept without thought. And suddenly the room that once felt normal begins to feel misaligned. That shift can feel painful because the human heart longs for connection. But the enemy twists that pain. He whispers dangerous interpretations. You don't belong anywhere. You're too different. No one understands you. And slowly the loneliness begins to feel like rejection. But hear this clearly, chosen one. Rejection and refinement are not the same thing. Darkness wants you to believe your separation means you are unwanted. He wants you to shrink, to quiet your voice, to return to environments that suffocate your spirit. Why? Because isolation misunderstood becomes a prison, but isolation understood becomes preparation. Look back at your life. How many times were you removed from places that limited your growth? How many relationships ended right when your awareness was expanding? How many environments suddenly felt too small for your spirit? That was not random. That was alignment correcting itself. Chosen ones are often separated before they are elevated, because you cannot carry a divine assignment while chained to environments that drain your spirit. You cannot lead with clarity if you are surrounded by confusion. You cannot walk in your calling if you are constantly shrinking yourself to fit spaces that were never designed for you. The loneliness you felt was not abandonment. It was protection. Protection from people who could not understand your path. Protection from systems that would have diluted your fire. Protection from environments that would have convinced you to live smaller than your destiny. And something inside you has already begun realizing this. You are no longer chasing approval the way you once did. You are no longer forcing connections that feel misaligned. You are beginning to stand alone with a quiet confidence. Not arrogance, alignment. Because a chosen one who understands their isolation stops begging for acceptance. They start recognizing preparation. And when that shift happens, loneliness transforms into power. You begin hearing your inner voice more clearly. You begin sensing divine guidance more strongly. You begin realizing that solitude sharpened you, refined you, prepared you. And that realization makes darkness nervous. Because once a chosen one understands why they were separated, they stop trying to return to smaller spaces, which forces the enemy to attack somewhere even deeper, your inner compass itself. Sixth, your intuition is programmed to distrust itself. This tactic is subtle, quiet, but devastating when it succeeds, because it targets the very compass God placed inside you. Your inner knowing. Chosen one, you were never meant to navigate life only with logic. Your mind is a tool, but your spirit is the guide. And from the beginning of your life, that guide was active. You sensed things before they happened. You read the energy of people before they spoke their true intentions. You felt warnings others could not feel. That quiet inner voice would whisper, "Something is wrong here." Or sometimes it would whisper the opposite, "Trust this path." You remember those moments, the strange certainty, the calm conviction that rose inside you without explanation. That was not imagination. That was discernment. But notice what happened over time. The world did not celebrate that gift. It questioned it. Teachers told you to stop overthinking. Friends told you to stop being suspicious. Authority figures told you to rely only on visible evidence. Logic became the only language the world respected. And slowly, something dangerous began happening. You started second-guessing the voice inside you. The same voice that had protected you. The same voice that had warned you about people. The same voice that had guided your path when nothing else made sense. Instead of trusting it, you began asking others what they thought. Instead of listening inward, you began seeking permission outward. And every time you ignored that inner nudge, something inside you dimmed just a little. Have you ever felt that regret, those moments when your intuition warned you, but you ignored it, and later you realized, "I knew this would happen"? Chosen one, that pain was not failure. It was evidence. Evidence that your compass was always working. The enemy cannot remove your intuition, so he uses a different tactic. He convinces you to distrust it. Because a chosen one who doubts their inner compass becomes easy to guide, easy to redirect, easy to manipulate. If you do not trust your instincts, you will trust the loudest voice in the room. If you do not trust your discernment, you will follow the crowd. If you do not trust the whisper inside your spirit, you will obey systems that were never meant to lead you. But something powerful has been happening inside you recently. The doubt is weakening. You are starting to notice patterns again. You are starting to sense people's intentions before they reveal them. You are starting to feel that inner voice growing stronger. That is not coincidence. That is restoration. Because the moment a chosen one begins trusting their intuition again, the manipulation begins to collapse. You stop ignoring red flags. You stop forcing connections that feel wrong. You stop walking down paths that your spirit has already warned you about. And suddenly your life begins shifting. Clarity returns. Boundaries strengthen. Decisions become sharper. That inner voice becomes your shield, your radar, your protection. Chosen one, your intuition is not random emotion. It is divine intelligence flowing through your spirit. It is one of the ways heaven communicates with those who are awake. And once you begin trusting it again, darkness loses one of its most powerful control mechanisms, which is why the enemy shifts strategies again. Because if he cannot confuse your identity, and he cannot drain your emotional energy, and he cannot silence your inner compass, he tries something even more dangerous. He tries to steal the one thing every chosen one believes they still have: time. Seventh, time is stolen through endless cycles of delay and distraction. This tactic does not feel like warfare at first. It feels like life. Busy days, endless responsibilities, constant movement, always doing something, always solving something, always responding to something, but rarely stopping, rarely reflecting, rarely listening. Chosen one, look back at your life for a moment. How many times did you feel the stirring to change something? A quiet urge to grow, to study deeper truths, to pursue the path that felt aligned with your spirit. You felt it clearly. A window opened, an opportunity appeared, a moment of awakening. But then something happened, a sudden wave of busyness, unexpected responsibilities, distractions that demanded your attention. And that moment of awakening slipped away, not violently, quietly. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years, and before you realized it, your spiritual evolution had been postponed. Not canceled, but postponed. Chosen one, understand this carefully. Darkness does not always try to destroy your destiny. Sometimes it simply delays your recognition of it, because the enemy knows something about time. The longer you stay distracted, the longer you stay surviving instead of awakening, the longer you stay reacting instead of reflecting, the longer your power remains dormant. And the world is very good at keeping chosen ones busy, always working, always solving problems, always carrying responsibilities for everyone around them. You become the strong one, the dependable one, the one everyone calls when something goes wrong. But while you are busy holding everything together for everyone else, your own spiritual awakening gets pushed further into the background. Have you noticed that pattern, moments when your soul felt ready to rise, but life suddenly became overwhelming? That was not random, because distraction is one of the most effective ways to delay a chosen one. You do not question the system when you are exhausted. You do not pursue deeper truth when you are overwhelmed. You do not awaken when your entire life becomes survival mode. But something began shifting recently. You started noticing how time had been slipping away. You started asking yourself deeper questions. Why does the world move so fast? Why is everyone always rushing? Why is there so little space for reflection? That realization is dangerous to the system because awareness breaks the delay. Chosen one, hear this truth. Your destiny cannot be erased. It was written long before the system ever tried to distract you. Your calling cannot be deleted, it can only be delayed. And the fact that you are hearing this message right now means something powerful. The delay is ending. You are beginning to reclaim your time. You are beginning to guard your attention. You are beginning to step away from distractions that once consumed your energy. And when a chosen one begins reclaiming their time, their awakening accelerates, clarity multiplies, discernment sharpens, purpose begins rising to the surface. The years that felt lost suddenly become preparation. Because once recognition arrives, everything moves faster. But darkness is not finished yet. Because when delay no longer works, the enemy tries something even more dangerous. He tries to weaponize your pain itself. Eighth, your pain is reframed as failure instead of initiation. This tactic strikes the heart of the chosen because it targets the very seasons that were meant to build your authority. Think about the hardest moments of your life, the betrayals you did not deserve, the doors that closed without explanation, the seasons when everything seemed to collapse at once. You prayed, you tried to stay faithful, you tried to understand, but the weight kept coming, and slowly a dangerous interpretation began whispering in your mind. Maybe you are cursed, maybe you did something wrong, maybe you were never meant for the destiny you felt. Have you heard those whispers before? They come quietly, not as loud accusations, but as subtle doubt. And when pain stretches long enough, those whispers start sounding believable. Chosen one, this is one of the enemy's most ruthless distortions, because the trials that were meant to forge you are presented as proof that you are failing. Your endurance is called weakness. Your struggle is labeled punishment. Your warfare is interpreted as abandonment. But the truth is the opposite. The battles that nearly broke you were not signs of rejection. They were signs of preparation. Look throughout every spiritual story of transformation. Elevation is never given to the untested. Authority is never handed to the unrefined. Fire always comes before the crown, and chosen ones experience a level of pressure that ordinary lives never encounter. Why? Because what you carry requires strength. Strength of spirit, strength of discernment, strength of endurance. The enemy knows this. So he tries to convince you that the refining fire is actually destruction. He wants you to walk away from your path right before the breakthrough arrives, right before the clarity appears, right before the authority you are being forged for begins to awaken. Think back to the moments when your life felt closest to collapsing. Moments when everything seemed uncertain. Moments when you wondered if your path had led you into darkness. Those were the moments when the battle around you was the most intense. And spiritual warfare intensifies for one reason. Elevation is near. The enemy does not waste energy attacking empty vessels. He targets the ones carrying purpose, the ones carrying influence, the ones carrying a light that threatens darkness. That is why your trials felt heavier than what others seem to experience. Your path was never ordinary. Your preparation was never ordinary. And the fact that you survived those seasons is not small. It is proof. Proof that the fire did not destroy you. It refined you. Look at who you are now. Your discernment is sharper. Your awareness is deeper. Your strength is quieter but stronger. Pain did not erase you, it awakened you. Chosen one, understand this truth. The enemy wanted your pain to convince you that you were failing, but your survival reveals the opposite. You were being forged. And when a chosen one realizes that their suffering was preparation, something powerful shifts. Shame dissolves. Fear weakens. Authority rises. Because you finally understand that every battle you survived was training. Training for the assignment that lies ahead. And once that realization locks into your spirit, darkness begins losing its grip completely. But there is still one final tactic, the most dangerous illusion of all, the one that keeps many chosen ones from fully stepping into their power. Ninth, the most dangerous tactic of all, convincing you that you are still asleep. Listen carefully, chosen one, because this is where the illusion reaches its final layer. After distraction, after identity confusion, after emotional exhaustion, after isolation, after doubt, the enemy whispers one final lie. You're not really awakening. You're just imagining things. You're still lost. Have you ever felt that hesitation, that quiet voice asking, "What if I'm wrong about all of this?" That is not a random thought. That is the final chain. Because if the adversary can convince you that your awakening has not truly begun, then you will hesitate. You will second-guess your authority. You will shrink your voice. You will delay stepping fully into your power. But hear this truth clearly. The very fact that you can recognize these tactics means something irreversible has already happened. Awakening has begun. You cannot see deception unless your eyes have started opening. You cannot question the system unless your spirit has started rising above it. You cannot recognize manipulation unless your discernment has already sharpened. The enemy's greatest fear is not your potential. It is your recognition. Recognition that the patterns you experience were not random. Recognition that your suffering had purpose. Recognition that the strange sense of destiny you have carried since childhood was never imagination. Chosen one, you were never lost. You were being prepared. Every season of confusion sharpened your awareness. Every betrayal strengthened your discernment. Every battle revealed another layer of your strength. And now something is happening that darkness cannot reverse. You are remembering, not learning, remembering. Remembering the authority placed inside your spirit. Remembering the fire that never truly went out. Remembering that you were never meant to live asleep inside a world built on distraction. Once a chosen one remembers, the system begins to lose its power because the energy it once drained from you is no longer available. You see the tactics, you see the illusions, you see the manipulation, and awareness breaks control. Darkness cannot dominate a spirit that sees clearly. That is why this final tactic was so important. If the enemy could keep you doubting your awakening, he could keep you small. But the moment you realize what has been happening, the illusion fractures completely. And when a chosen one fully awakens, everything changes. Your voice becomes stronger. Your presence becomes heavier. Your discernment becomes impossible to fool. Your light becomes dangerous to every system built on deception. You are no longer drifting. You are no longer searching. You are no longer questioning whether you belong on this path. You know. You feel it in your bones. You feel it in the quiet strength rising inside you right now. Chosen one, this is not the beginning of your awakening. This is the confirmation. You were always marked. You were always protected. You were always being prepared for something larger than ordinary life could contain. Look at everything you survived. Look at every battle that should have broken you. And yet here you are, stronger, clearer, awake. You are not random. You are not forgotten. You are chosen. And once a chosen one awakens fully, darkness cannot return them to sleep. Stand in that truth. Carry it boldly. Walk forward knowing your destiny was written long before the enemy ever tried to delay it. Now I want to hear from the awakened. If this message confirms something deep inside your spirit, write 9 in the comments. Let it be a signal, a declaration that your awakening is real. And if you are ready to continue strengthening your discernment and understanding your divine assignment, subscribe to this channel, because this space exists for the ones who know they were never ordinary, the ones who have always felt the calling, the ones who refuse to return to spiritual sleep. Remember this as you move forward. You were never meant to blend in with the world. You were meant to illuminate it, and nothing formed against a fully awakened chosen one will ever stand.